All right, let's dive into a system that can feel, incredibly complex and just confusing. Family court. We're going to use this really powerful metaphor to make sense of it all, the iceberg. Because what you actually see on the surface, that is just a tiny, tiny fraction of what's really driving the whole thing.
So, have you ever been involved in this system and just asked yourself, why? Why do the outcomes feel so slow, so confusing? Why does the final decision sometimes seem totally disconnected from what you know to be true? Well, that feeling is super common, and it's because most of us are only looking at the very tip of that iceberg.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? A court hearing, it really is like a movie trailer. It shows you all the dramatic moments, a few sound bites, but it leaves out the entire plot, right? All the character development. The real case, the full story, is everything happening below the surface. So let's start where everybody else does, with the part everyone sees, the tip of the iceberg. This is everything that happens above the waterline. It's what we focus on, what we stress about, but honestly, it can create a powerful and often really misleading illusion.
Yeah, you see all the public events, the hearings themselves, the motions being filed, the final order as the judge signs. You see the numbers on a child support sheet or the dates on a custody schedule. It's all that tangible, visible stuff that we think of as the case.
But here's the kicker. This view is so misleading. I mean, think about it. A judge might have a few hours, or sometimes just a few minutes, to try and understand months or even years of a really complex family conflict. What they're getting is the most condensed version imaginable, and they have to make a huge decision based on that tiny little snapshot.
Okay, so now it's time to take a deep dive. We're going below the waterline. This is where the real work of a case happens. It's way less dramatic than a courtroom argument, for sure, but it is so much more important. This is where outcomes get shaped, long before a judge ever signs a final order.
So check this out. The first huge hidden driver is something called status quo momentum. See, early in a case, a judge will often issue temporary orders for things like custody. Now, even though they're called temporary, they create a new normal almost immediately. After a few months of a child doing well in that routine, courts get really hesitant to change it. That gives a massive advantage to whatever was decided right at the beginning of the case. And that brings us to a really tough but critical point. Family court isn't just a search for the truth. It's a system with very strict rules and procedures. You can have every single fact on your side, but if you don't play by the rules of the game, if you don't follow the right procedure, those facts might never even be heard by the judge. Just think about these invisible factors. Missing a filing deadline by just one day, not following a weirdly specific local court rule, or trying to submit evidence that isn't legally admissible. Any one of these little procedural trip-ups can completely derail your case, no matter how strong your story is. This is probably one of the biggest disconnects for people. What you feel is powerful evidence versus what a court can actually use. Yeah, your emotional story is valid, but a judge needs dated, organized proof. Saying everyone knows he does this is useless, but a school attendance record, that's a hard fact. And that one single damning text message, it loses all its power without the full conversation to give it context. So the big lesson here is that the best evidence, well, it's kind of boring. It's a clear, consistent timeline of events, and it's backed up by objective third-party records, things from schools, doctors, therapists. Consistency and context, they're absolutely everything. All right, let's go even deeper now. We're diving into the human elements that are working way, way below the surface. This isn't about rules or procedure anymore. This is about psychology, perception, and a ton of pressure. This is a concept called credibility optics, and it's huge. At the end of the day, court is a human system. Judges are people, and they form impressions. How you present yourself, your calmness, your organization, your focus on the child can sometimes matter even more than the raw facts you're presenting. It's all about discipline. And it is shockingly easy to sabotage your own credibility without even realizing it. Firing off an angry text that looks aggressive out of context, or dumping 1,000 pages of disorganized documents on the court, or a big one, posting something on social media that totally contradicts what you're arguing in your case. These things create a negative impression that is very, very hard to undo. Okay, another massive unseen force is settlement pressure. The reality is, most cases don't actually go to trial. They settle. But here's the thing. They often settle not because the agreement is perfectly fair, but because one person or both people have just run out of money, time, and emotional energy. Endurance, sadly, becomes a key factor in the outcome.
And this pressure, well, it can open the door for some really subtle but damaging control tactics. These aren't things that necessarily look like abuse on paper, but man, are they effective at wearing an opponent down. We're talking about things like stonewalling, just intentionally delaying responses, or baiting, provoking you into an angry reaction they can then screenshot and use as evidence, or even filing pointless motions that are just designed to drain your bank account.
And then at the very, very bottom of this iceberg, down in the deepest, coldest water, is the child's reality. While all the adults are focused on the process and the fight, a child is often trapped in this impossible loyalty bind, feeling like they have to choose between the two people they are biologically wired to love and depend on. This chronic conflict, that is the real hidden cost.
So after that pretty deep dive, let's come back up for air and bring this all together. Because understanding this entire iceberg, not just the tip, is the absolute key to navigating this system more effectively.
The question we started with was, why do these outcomes feel so disconnected from the truth? Well, now that we've seen the whole iceberg, what really decides the case?
It's almost never the final, dramatic arguments in the courtroom. It's the momentum built from those early temporary orders. It's the boring, consistent quality of your documentation. It's how credible and calm you appear. It's that immense financial and emotional pressure to settle. And it's the simple discipline to follow the court's strict procedures. These are the real drivers.
And that brings us to the single most important takeaway from all of this. That final court order you see? It's often just the formal, rubber-stamped confirmation of a result that was really shaped weeks, months, or even years earlier by all of these hidden, below-the-waterline factors.
So we're going to leave you with this final and hopefully empowering question. Now that you can see the whole iceberg, not just the tiny tip, you can make a choice. Instead of getting caught up in the visible drama, the highlight reel, you can start putting your energy into the foundational parts of the case that truly shape the outcome. So, knowing all this, where are you going to focus your energy?